Recording's on. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, Devin, for making the time to meet with us today. And I will give the time over to you. I will get this screen share situation so you can share your screen. And when we move into me asking you questions, just let me know and I'll start to just go back and forth with you.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Heather.
And then we'll have you can go through your presentation and we'll have some time for questions after we talk. Got it.
I'm used to working with two screens here, so it took me a minute to figure this out with one. Heather, I'm at our Driftwood property right now. We're putting on a Trex next week.
Yeah.
Up in the mountains, and I've been scrambling the last couple of days to get a bunch of equipment ready and loaded up to head upstate. So anyway, I'm here at the Driftwood Camp House.
Oh,
internet reception, or the internet service can be spotty, so I apologize if I cut in a little bit, but yeah, I'll get going here, and thank you again for having me. It's nice to reconnect with Idaho here, the University of, and the state, and to talk with you all today. And my name is Devin Yeatman, and I'm originally from Maryland, and I currently live in Greenville, South Carolina, which is in the upstate, kind of in the mountain area. But I'll kind of talk a little bit more specifics about my background in a little bit. But I've been in fire for 15 years now. It's hard to believe. The years really fly by. But as you can see on the screen, I work for the Nature Conservancy in South Carolina. So most of my work is in the state here. I occasionally collaborate with some out of state stuff and occasionally internationally, but most of it's in South Carolina. But being the state fire manager is kind of the equivalent of being an FMO. I mean, I think it's definitely a leg down from FMO, and just purely because our fire program is quite a bit smaller than like a typical Western or Eastern, whatever, national forest. So anyway, I'm FMO-ish, and what that means is I administer the fire program. So all the paperwork, SOPs, legalese, agreements with other partners, MOUs, all the fun things that we all get into this line of work for. But then, I also do the operational piece. So we have a burn seat. I mean, really, you could burn almost year round in South Carolina. But, we kind of hit it hard from January to May, because the way our program is set up now, we lean heavily on typically Western seasonals come out here and help us burn. So they'll come out here in their winter off season. But, we hit it hard then. We kind of pick off burns here and there throughout the rest of the year. But anyway, I'm busy running around the state, leading fires as a burn boss, and as well as doing a lot of collaborating with other partners to help them burn. So we provide boots on the ground. So I coordinate all that. But, U.S. Forest Service, South Carolina State Parks, state DNR, state forestry, other nonprofits. I mean, it's really an alphabet soup of organizations we work with. And as I'll talk about later, it's kind of one of the things I especially enjoy about my work is working with a whole different variety of people. But yeah, so as the state fire manager, it's kind of an operational piece and then an admin piece. And for many years, the chapter only had one permanent fire person, but I'm just thrilled to announce that we just hired another full-time person, burn boss, or someone almost burn boss qualified to work on the coast. So our program is growing and allow us to do more. And it's kind of an exciting time. As everyone here knows, there's a lot of opportunity in the fire world these days with I think it's a combination of becoming a more pressing societal issue, and accordingly more particularly federal money being devoted to it, with some of these recent legislative pieces. So, there's a lot of money sloshing around and a lot of opportunity to be had. So it's a really cool time to get into fire, and especially prescribed fire. But I haven't done wildfire in a number of years. I'll probably get back into it next year. I've just kind of been the having young children phase of my life, and I travel so much for my kind of prescribed fire job working around the state. I haven't felt compelled to go out west, but starting to get the itch again because I do miss it quite a bit. But as you can see in kind of the middle of the slide there, I have a number of different identities as we all do. I have two young boys, as you can see in the picture. We have a great time together. I love getting out of the woods and doing all kinds of different things. I'm a huge adventurer. I guess not as much having young kids as I used to be, but intend to get back into it. But being in particularly seasonal fire allowed me a lot of really neat life opportunities, having time off. Been to over 30 countries and had all kinds of wild times and adventures with people. Obviously, I'm a burn boss. I'm definitely a nerd. I love sci-fi and fantasy. I was into Dungeons and Dragons back when it used to get you beat up back in the 90s. I understand it's having a resurgence now, but anyway, again, as all of us, we have one or all these different identities, of which work is just one piece, and that's one piece of advice I can offer is that if work is stressing you out or someone's got your goat or whatever, I find it helpful just to remember that, work is only a part of your identity. And for me, it just helps me zoom out and be like, okay, even if it all went to hell in a handbasket and I got canned, it would all be okay. I have people that love me in my life and all that. But, that's just kind of who I am. And I will move forward with a little bit more of my background here. So this is just my background in brief on the right-hand side. So I was born in Maryland, in Annapolis. I was raised in a family with a lot of Navy connections. I was not in the military myself, but I born and raised there. Got my degree in geography, as I was telling Quinn, at Penn State. And then from there, I see the Craig Hotshot logo. I kind of fell down a rabbit hole of wildfire for a period of years as a seasonal. Started off on an engine and worked on several different hotshot crews, and I was itinerant for a while, with working out west in the summer and traveling abroad, and then working in out east burning in the winter, and it eventually kind of started to feel like Groundhog Day. I was wondering, well, is this it? What else should I do? So that's when I started looking into grad school, and you see that's the University of Idaho chapter of my life, and that's how I got to meet Heather, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. And then after school, came to South Carolina as a fire practitioner and now a burn boss. But as you can see, kind of the qualifications, education, all that stuff. There was as you'll notice, a 10-year gap between my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. And I always knew that even when I was in school initially at Penn State, I was always interested in getting a graduate degree. I just didn't know what in. Sort of the academic challenge of it always interested me. But I decided to take time off and get out into the world and figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm sure glad I did. At the time, being a university student, I didn't even know wildfire existed. Now, obviously I did, but as far as like a legitimate line of work where it's like really cool and stuff running around, I grew up in the lush, rainy East Coast that's all urbanized and stuff. There's basically zero wildfires. In Western Maryland, it's a little more mountainous, it's a little bit, but they basically don't happen. It's certainly nothing you ever hear about. So I didn't even know about that when I was in school. And one thing too about that gap between undergrad and grad is that, in the 8 years of work experience I had, I just appreciated going to school so much more. And I was so pumped to be there, so motivated. Like the student life just really resonated with me. I had a damn good time that I know if I would have gone straight through knowing my own personal history and background without being really that motivated, it would not have worked out as well. But with fire qualifications, as you'll see, I'm kind of like burn boss level stuff. Got all the stuff you need to be a burn boss. Double single resource, IC4, and then which leads to RXP2. But in looking to get back into wildfire suppression, and I'll probably just go out once a year. That would scratch my itch. But I'm gonna open up a task force leader task book and go after that. I think it'd be a fun one, and it's also an in-demand quality, easy to get out as. But and going to kind of the specific background here, it's kind of a lot going on, a lot of colors in this slide, but I'll draw your attention to the flow chart, and that kind of spells out a little bit more specifically what my background is like, and thanks to Heather for providing the template for that. But as I mentioned, I got a bachelor's in geography at Penn State, and then the way I actually got exposed to wildland fire was I had a internship after college working for the SCA, the Student Conservation Association, and I was on their fire mon team. I don't even know if they have it anymore because this was in 2007, so it's been a minute. But so fire mon meaning fire monitoring, using brown transects and other things like that. I'm sure Heather's taught some of you about that, depending on what classes you've been in. But basically counting sticks out in the woods, doing fuel loading and mapping it. And actually, I worked on a native reservation. It was in Warm Springs, outside of Mount Hood in Oregon, and that's where I got my fire training. Got just basically the FFT2. We never ended up getting out on a fire that year, but even just being plugged into that environment, it was so cool. And again, it blew my young Maryland mind. Because that summer Oregon burned pretty good, and Warm Springs has a hot shot crew, and we'd be kind of coming back to their base, and people coming out of the field all dirty and smiling, and I was like, "Damn, that looks like a good time." Well, it wasn't meant to be initially, because that job ended, and I moved back east, and my life took a right turn. I got a job because I had compelled to get some kind of job. I got a job at an engineering firm in Baltimore, Maryland, doing kind of environmental engineering work. It was like measuring petroleum product in underground storage tanks at gas stations and working at remediation sites and all that. And it was for a kind of a corporate America situation. And I don't know if y'all have ever seen Office Space before, and like TPS reports and all that kind of thing. It was that kind of vibe. And being a young man, 22, 23 years old, just not how I wanted to live my life, doing that kind of thing. And having like 2 weeks vacation a year, I just wasn't going to be able to see and do the things I wanted to do in this world. So while I did learn a lot of valuable skills there, and actually did some really learned a lot of mechanical skills, like wrenching on some of these remediation systems, but it was time to go. So I was there for almost 2 years, and as I was sort of a little, I don't want to say depressed about my situation, as I was like wondering the next step, that fire thing was always in the back of my head, that I learned, in my fireman position at Warm Springs. So that winter, I guess the winter of 2008 going into 2009, I just started cold calling all kinds of people for, BLM outstations and Forest Service district officers, trying to get connected with an engine boss or a crew boss or anyone that's hiring. And just, I'm sure I called hundreds of people, certainly more than 100. And this is also about the time the economy tanked with the original Great Recession. So there was a lot of people were coming back into fire. So for all my efforts, I did get rewarded. I got a few legitimate bites, and ended up at an outstation in Nevada with the BLM. I'm sure y'all probably know where Winnemucca is, but probably less of you know where McDermott is, and which is right on the border with Oregon and Nevada. It's about 75 miles north of Winnemucca. It's squarely in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing going on there. There's like a gas station and a casino and place to buy beer, and quite a bit of beer we did drink. But I it's funny, for being a slow summer and not in the best place, I just had such a kick-ass time. I was high on life, I was just like pumped to be back out west, and I was pumped to be in fire. And I just took that opportunity. I was like asking everyone about everything, and trying to learn as much as I could. And I just had a really wonderful time. And what I did know from from my time there is I definitely wanted to be on a hotshot crew because they got out a lot more, and that kind of work resonated with me. I was always really into, I don't know, somewhat masochistic backpacking adventures and things like that. So, hiking around all day with a heavy pack, I was like, oh, that seems kind of cool. So anyway, that kind of, going from Nevada, that kind of led me into the hotshot world. And I spent 5 years kind of bouncing around hotshot crews, and you can see in there, I worked on Craig, which is a BLM crew out of Colorado for a couple of years. And then I went to Chena up in Alaska, BLM crew. And then I took a summer off of fire due to personal tragedy in my life. And then I got back into fire and worked for Black Mountain Hotshots in 2014 and 2015. But after my first summer, kind of having that whole winter off, like 6-7 months, I got kind of stir crazy. It's like, well, I do appreciate the time off. That's just too much time for me. And I wanted to do work. And I was also genuinely interested in fire science and fire ecology. And I learned about off-season burning jobs from people I'd worked with in Nevada. So I just kind of, using my similar strategy from before, I just started cold calling and emailing people in the Nature Conservancy and with the Fish and Wildlife Service. Fish has a bunch of off-season burning jobs. National Parks does as well. Just cold calling people and emailing people, pounding on their door, trying to figure out the landscape, trying to get work. And it didn't work the first year, didn't find anything. But the second year I got picked up here in South Carolina. And for my current supervisor, he's who hired me at the time, Tom Dooley, he recognized my name from the first time I applied, and we had that rapport from before. So if you don't succeed, then try again. So it worked out. And then, I spent 5 years in the winters coming out to South Carolina as on the burn crew. And the last 3 of those were kind of the crew manager position. But as I mentioned earlier, doing that, rinsing and repeating, I had a really great time and learned a lot and was able to travel a lot in the off season, had fun, but it just kind of started to feel like the same old. And I feel like it was kind of that shit or get off the pot kind of situation where I knew I didn't want to stay on a hotshot crew. It was like you get a permanent job, but I didn't know what to do. And I was like, well, that graduate school thing had always interested me. So I started looking into grad school and using my tried and true technique, started pounding on people's doors about whether they were looking for graduate students, all kinds of fire programs around the country that have fire programs, and just doing that thing. And there's really, unless you kind of have an in or a specific project you want to work on, it can be difficult to track someone down. A lot of people just don't have openings at the time you may be looking for. But I was able to get lined up with Crystal Colden at the University of Idaho, and she's no longer here. I think a few years ago she went to California, and I forget what university, but did a kind of a remote sensing based project with Crystal, looking at the home ignition zone. So in the wildland urban interface, how basically the immediate area around a house and the vegetation around it, and how that affects house being burned or not burned. So did a project with her. And as I mentioned, just generally, I had a really wonderful time at the University of Idaho, met great people. UI has a really awesome fire community. I mean, it's probably the best, if not the best, one of the top couple in the US as far as the number of people in the fire program and all the stuff they have going on. Heather is a hell of a spark plug there, is doing awesome things for everyone. And there's really just a lot going on. I had a great time. And also just generally being a full-time student. And that was also important to me. I know a lot of people that do graduate work now. There's an online program that's really great. And it kind of works with the working professionals, so people that chip away at classes, in off hours from their day job. And I thought about that, but I wanted a more immersive graduate experience, where you could do a research project and be a student again. And my wife, now wife, and I, as my girlfriend at the time, she moved out there with me. We really had a wonderful time in Idaho and in Moscow and in the UI community. So, finished up my degree in 2017, and I had some unique perspective in having had some degree of a working career before, where I realized that having a chunk of time off with not necessarily anything to do, pressing to do, I realized what a gift that was. So I wasn't jonesing to get a job. So my wife and I it ended up being about 6 months off, and we did a long distance trail in Idaho. We hiked it's called the Idaho Centennial Trail. It's about 1,000 miles long, goes from the Idaho-Nevada border north-south and up to the Canadian border. And then we spent a few months road tripping around the Northwest, had a killer time. And it was kind of in the latter part of that, I started looking for jobs, and honestly, my default plan was to go back to Alaska because I really loved Alaska Fire and how they do things. And there's some good folks up there. But lo and behold, my old boss, Tom Dooley in South Carolina, came knocking at my door. He said there's a full-time position here and said I should apply for it. And to be honest, I at the time, I did not have any interest in coming back, because I was, in my mind, I'd spent 5 seasons of my life there, and I'd kind of checked the box and kind of want to move on to something different. But I was like, well, I've got nothing else better going on in my life. So may as well just do it, and applied, got the job, and moved back to South Carolina. And I'll tell you what, I'm super glad I did, because I've had a wonderful time here. And just my position here versus what I used to do is just, while it's the same world, it's also totally different. This is, much more, I'm operations now, obviously, but there's like a lot more planning and collaborating with partners. It's kind of like the next level up, and it's been really immersive and a really valuable experience. And TNC, I came in, actually, I was underqualified for my job when I applied. It was supposed to be, you're supposed to be single resource qualified. And while I was almost single resource qualified, I wasn't there yet. And I was just FFT1. But another piece of advice is that I would, if the job interests you, but you're underqualified, apply. Please apply, because you just never know what's going to happen. And as a hiring manager now, there is a massive hiring crisis in the wildland fire world, and there's tremendous opportunity. There's vacancies all over the place, and I would just definitely stick your name in the hat, regardless of your perception of whether you're qualified or underqualified, because there's just really a lot of opportunity out there. But anyway, it got picked up, and it's been great, and I was able to kind of work towards Burn Boss and get that done. And TNC is a really great organization, kind of broadly, but with professional development. I basically just got the green light to do whatever I wanted to make it happen, to get Burn Boss qualified. And even now, if there's a training I want to do, it doesn't matter if it's in California or wherever, I just go do it. I don't even ask, because I just have that latitude and that sort of that rapport with my supervisor. Obviously, I don't, get too crazy with things, and I keep it somewhat reasonable. But it's been a really good experience, and has led me to where I am now. And this is another thing I'll say, is that I've had a very meandering path, but I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been so fun, and I have met so many good people along the way in so many different places. I have a really, really great network. Like that winter job working with TNC all those years, and that persists now. We get so many Westerners that come through, smoke jumpers, hotshot crew all over the place, and people from all different kinds of modules all over. So there's like a constant rotating cast of fire people that come through, and I really treasure the time I've spent with those people, and I'm so happy to have those relationships and that network moving forward. But yeah, I guess the kind of the meandering path is also a little bit kind of is my personality, that doesn't bother me at all. I know some people are more hard chargers and want to do the A to the B to the C to the D, but I would encourage being open-minded, because you never know what when you're at a fork in the road, that road that or that path you might not fully know can lead to some really good things. And then kind of the last thing I'll touch about is just what I enjoy about fuels and fire. And apologies for the bro picture here. I totally forgot about this. This is when I was on China in 2012. We were at the Missouri River Breaks or something, and I don't the superintendents had us pull off our shirts for a shirtless picture. Just feeling the moment there. But anyway, I dredged that up when I was looking for photos for this presentation, and I just got a kick out of it. But the reason I brought it up and kind of what I enjoy about fuels and fire management, and I kind of alluded to it a minute ago, is just the people in it. And fire is kind of like a less conventional career path, and it attracts a certain kind of person, and you do a certain kind of work with them, and the relationships that you build with them are unlike, or there's very few things, very few ways to replicate that in the military is a good example, but just the people you meet along the way and doing the work, that's really kind of what keeps me going. And throughout my years, I've worked with so many kick-ass guys and gals that I just have a lot of respect for, and a lot of fond memories of. But then kind of like with that people aspect, you can see at the bottom of the screen there's that little ribbon with FLNs. The FLNs, the Fire Learning Network. It was a collaboration. I think it's probably almost 20 years old, but it's a initially between U.S. Forest Service and TNC, but now it's a bunch of different agencies, state and federal. But as part of my job, like I mentioned, I work with such an alphabet soup of different organizations, and I just love it. I love mixing it up with different folks from different backgrounds, and good old boy Southerners and all this stuff. I just love it. So that kind of the people aspect is something I really enjoy. And then you see the middle picture. What that was, speaking of challenges, that was my first year on a hotshot crew. Someone tempted me to do it's called the Around the World Challenge. You basically have to eat cases of MREs come in a case of 12, and you have to eat the 12 main meals out of the MREs and do it in less than an hour. So folks ponied up about $500, and I got it done at about minute 59, and as you can imagine, I puked my guts out afterwards. And there's a video of it floating around somewhere. But anyway, that's a very unique kind of challenge. Oh, I also did the 4-4-40 challenge the following year, back in my glory days. But the other challenges I'm referring to are just collaborating, and that kind of like collaborating with others to solve problems. People are very passionate about natural resources, and naturally you got like hunters. There's all these constituencies: hunters, birders, hikers and bikers, people in it for the aesthetics, natural resource extraction, all that stuff. And they all have different views of nature and what should be done with it, and all that kind of thing. And it can be challenging to chart a path forward and resolve issues or problems as they arise. But I find kind of untangling some of that, working with others to untangle that kind of stuff, and especially with kind of how physical or visceral that work outside is in nature. Kind of that combination makes it, that challenge aspect, when you get things resolved, it's just really especially satisfying. And then obviously, to kind of bring it to a close here, the work itself is just awesome and so much fun. As I said, working as a team, you're on what I view as a noble mission, working, using such a primal force. It really kind of like plucks a very particular note or string within your soul, working with other people outside to get this kind of work done. And you just get to do and see some really amazing things that other people just have no idea about what it's like. And really, and especially our modern world, increasingly digital world, the stuff you do is really, really awesome. And it scratches an itch that it's just really, really hard to do or find a way to scratch in our modern world. So yeah, I'll stop there and I'll kick it over to Heather.
Awesome. What I like about this slide is that it kind of looks like the FLN had that as a banner on it. like you put the FLN banner. I love the shirtless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My colleague Kristen, she runs the local FLN. I'll have to show that to her. She'll get a
say
kick
like,
out of it.
hey, if you're looking for like, a new website banner picture, I got some options for you.
Yeah, FLN endorsed and approved.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so carrying forward, thank you. This is great fun. I'm enjoying myself. So you mentioned some of the challenges in the work that you do, more specifically the challenges and the ridiculous things that firefighters do to keep busy on the fire line. But in the work that you're doing now, what are some of the challenges? Not the like, I challenge you to eat, blah, 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 but what are the things that make your job hard?
As I mentioned earlier,
either your job or this job, either general.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll just speak to my current job as a sort of a state fire manager, or I'll just say a fire manager more generally. I mentioned before there's a hiring crisis, and I found that our applicant pool in just the last few years has been thinning out. So less people are applying, and the depth of experience and qualifications has gone noticeably down versus what it was 5 years ago. There are lots of people leaving the fire workforce for a whole host of reasons, and that's happening at the exact time we're collectively trying to ramp up the scale of the work that we do, ramp up our efforts significantly, perhaps exponentially when you look at some of the numbers that are thrown around on the national scale. And the numbers just don't compute. How do we get that work done with what we have, much less people than we currently have? So we need to find ways to hire and encourage a whole new generation of people to get into fire. And I take that as really kind of a sacred part of my role, is growing and nurturing young firefighters and providing them a positive work environment, a positive culture, and showing them that there's really good work to be done, and there's really good environments to do that work in. And so that's definitely one big challenge, is trying to do more work with the same or less amount of people. So we got to get that piece figured out. But also, and just as I mentioned before, kind of the challenge of natural resources work and just how passionate people are about it. What I'll say is that in kind of helping to resolve some of those things when problems pop up, I just got to say that getting people together face to face goes such a long way. And I love these kind of like multi-stakeholder meetings and groups that go on in my current role. I get jazzed about it. But in getting people together, I mean, you really just kind of like see and feel the humanity in other people. I guess the kind of the opposite extreme is when you just like view someone as just like the other end of like a angry Facebook post, and it's easy to like spiral off about turning someone into the devil or whatever. But it's when you have people right in front of you face to face, and you kind of see them as the person they are, and you inevitably end up talking, shooting the breeze, kind of like it just like really does a great way. It's really great for kind of knocking down barriers and taking the air out of the room. I mean, you really just quickly realize how much more there is connecting all of us than there is separating or dividing us. So So again, that people aspect is inherently challenging, but ultimately resolvable. Actually, I'm more optimistic about that than the hiring piece, at least to achieving the scale that we want to.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you about now the knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And you've heard these as abilities often, but I like to think about them as attitudes. So I want you to tell us a little bit about the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that would be most helpful for this generation to develop so they can be successful and happy working in fire and or fuels.
Yeah. And I will say that I guess I view knowledge and skills as sort of external attributes. There's things that can be acquired through diligent effort, and attitudes is more of an internal thing. While it can be changed and nurtured over time, it's kind of more difficult. Like with the knowledge and skills, like I feel you can kind of like fill the bucket pretty easily. Not always that easy, but you know what I mean. The attitudes piece is that requires a lot of honest self-reflection and trying to become a better person, and I'll probably touch on this a little later, but I view that as perhaps the most important thing. But Heather, with that said, as far as being successful in the fire and fuels world, and especially as a leader, and really there's not a whole lot of roles you could have in fire where you aren't in some kind of a leadership role. It's hard to just be the lone ranger specialist way off in the corner. I mean, those positions exist, but it's definitely the exception rather than the rule. But on the knowledge piece, I think learning fire behavior and fuels, and to me, the best way to do that is just learning it on the job, trigger time, if you will. So with speaking from what I know of myself and what I've observed in the folks that come through our program, just being exposed to the local fuels, and I do mostly prescribed fire now, obviously, but same as wildfire. Just seeing how the forest or other fuels react given the base weather conditions and that exact fuel type there on that given day, and you just developed an instinct for it. And I just love seeing our folks, like over the course of a burn season, start to develop that vision. Think of like think of like a running back, and like really good running backs, they have that vision to like see the hole before it develops, or certainly as it's developing. It's not like the hole's there and then you run for it. It's seeing ahead of time where how you need to adjust your firing techniques, and seeing problems before they develop, and kind of like getting ahead of the curve. So that instinct you develop with just exposure to fire behavior and different fuel types is just huge, and that'll serve you tremendously in your career. And I think mechanical knowledge is really useful for all the different pumps and saws and blowers and all that stuff you use. And another thing, I guess I would think of it as like, I don't know, generalist knowledge maybe. So because we work outdoors with so much different equipment and so many different scenarios, just having like and this kind of really comes along with experience. Some people are generally more savvy or street smart, if you want to think of it that way, than other people are. But you can also kind of build this over time. It's just, again, just being in those situations. But when something breaks, something goes sideways, you just got to figure it out on the fly. Sometimes it's a lot more urgent than others, but just kind of that sort of like generalist type knowledge comes in super handy. And I really value having folks like that in our burn program. And then, it's like a sense of direction is good, especially helpful if you work in different places. We all have phones that give us a little blue dot now, shows you where you are, but that technology doesn't always work exactly when you need it to, and just having a general sense of direction. I pose that as like a good challenge to folks coming up, because I'm sure this generation, they've got, they're all plugged into field maps and Avenza, like mobile app programs on your phone. It's way too easy to just head down and you can use that to follow your way. The less you can use those and build that muscle of being comfortable just navigating, developing that sense of direction, I think that'll serve you really well. And then I think especially these days, a knowledge of when to call out bad behavior when it arises, because doing so ultimately leads to a higher quality work environment for all of us. And even in the 15 years since I've been in fire, I'm certainly no old school guy. That's for sure, when things were even quite a bit different than I was around. But it's been going in a good direction, and honestly, I think that's a piece of why we have a hiring crisis on our hands is that there's a crappy, many places toxic work environment for a long time, and it drove people out. They're just fed up with some of the attitudes and some of the really bad things people did. I'll call it gatekeeping with qualifications and holding that other weaponizing of qualifications and holding people back for petty reasons. That's resulted in so many people leaving fire. So but the better we're all collectively able to address that stuff and make progress, it just makes a higher quality work environment for us all to thrive and do well in. And getting on to skills. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think leadership skills and abilities are about mandatory, in kind of every aspect of fire, more or less, and a lot, and just that's just something that you hone over time. Being in the situations, you develop a comfort in yourself and in your decision making, and just kind of working with different people in different scenarios. You just kind of just figure out your own style over time. Everyone's got their own style, and as far as skills, I mean, there's the stuff like GIS, which is super useful. I mean, unless you have a kind of an analysis heavy job, I think some fuels positions in particular do it, or buyer behavior analysts and stuff. I mean, it really just comes down to map making these days. I only use GIS for map making. I wish I did more with it. I probably have to take one of Heather's classes again. But yeah, GIS is super handy. Obviously, chainsaw and medical skills, while they're not required, I will say they're highly sought after. I mean, if you're an EMT, you can punch your ticket with any job you want. I love seeing EMTs in our application pool. People that have falling quals and experience is a huge plus, especially now. I don't see it as much as we used to. The skill of getting along with others is such a huge thing that you really need to cultivate throughout your life and your career. It makes things so much easier. You get the one end of the spectrum where, in seasonal fire, you're living with others. You just gotta make it work so everyone's happy. But then, even if you're in management, learning how to read the room and know when the right time to say something is, or kind of what the correct thing to focus on and leave to the side is. It's just learning to read others and especially getting along with others and collaborating with others. It just makes your ability to get stuff done just vastly superior to being someone that people really gripe about working with. But and I guess this skill, well, it might fall into more of the attitude. Maybe I'll just start to pivot to that. But when I hire folks, I really want, and quite frankly need, motivated, self-starting individuals. And I just really highly value this on our crew and our program. And thinking of the thankfully very few people who have not been successful here, it's because they have not had that intrinsic kind of self-starting ability and at times that motivation. Using our program as a specific example, the burn minimums we have, obviously depending on the complexity of the burn, can go up, but we do a lot of our burns with 6 people, sometimes 5 people. So that body of work of getting a burn done is divided amongst a lot fewer people. So when someone's not pulling their weight, I mean, it just stands out like a sore thumb, and it can really be a significant drag on the operation. You know, it's not like if you're in a 20-person hand crew and you're putting in line, and one guy or gal's kind of dragging, that slack can kind of get picked up by other people. It's just way harder when there's a lot less people to do a job. So just kind of like being excited about being there, and knowing that the job's not done until everyone is done their job. So if you see your comrade over there still filling fuel or whatever, they got to run an errand, you know, go and help them, and just kind of knowing, you know, knowing when the time to hang it up is, and just kind of being just motivated and helping others. I find that huge. But what's, you know, kind of along with some of that more attitude stuff, you know, respect for yourself and others is just paramount. And you really need to have that to be successful in this job. And that kind of relates to getting along and working with others. And I think humbleness and humility are key for growth and learning. So in other words, realizing that you don't have all the answers, or there's not just one way of doing something. If you're open-minded and receptive to stuff, then, oh my gosh, the world is, it's almost like you're looking at it through a child's eyes. It's actually quite wonderful. I mean, I pick up stuff from our seasons that come through here all the time, and it makes me excited. You know, I can't imagine being a crusty old guy that, you know, is just used to doing doing things of the ways of, you know, in the good old days or whatever. That just sounds both old and boring and actually stressful to me. You know, it's just seeing other people doing stuff different ways and kind of feeling resentful about it. So anyway, just being open-minded to learning, and then kind of along with that is like cultivating curiosity and being mindful of learning opportunities, and actually seeking out learning opportunities. And whether that's, you know, you see someone 20 feet away, kind of like, you know, tying a special knot to secure the strap on the ratchet, you know, secure the tail and the ratchet strap after you cinch down the UTV, like, oh, wow, yeah, can you go show me how to do that? You know, just there's learning opportunities. They abound, especially when you're in a new role or a new position. So, yeah, cultivating curiosity and just being, you know, just knowing that the world is wide open and there's so much to do and learn and see there, and just looking at it through that kind of lens is really helpful. And then, you know, and it kind of relates to humility, but it is a little bit different. So kind of a willingness to admit you're wrong. And I think another way to phrase that is vulnerability. You know, when you make a mistake, owning up to it. I found that people have a lot of respect for that, and they respect you more after it. So it's not, you know, digging in deeper and trying to make, because ultimately that just makes the problem worse. You know, this isn't U.S. politics here, where you can just scream and yell and deny everything, blah blah blah, and never admit fault. You know, we're human beings that work very closely together and are trying to get a good important job done, and we just, you know, that vulnerability, I think, is really really important, and just admitting you're wrong, and we can all learn from it and move on. And then, you know, also related to kind of working in smaller operations, you know, the ability to think critically is required. You know, I don't want automatons out there that I have to like tell them every little thing to do. And part of this is that relates to that self-starting kind of aspect. But as you learn over time, just like figuring out, you know, when to do something, as you know, in such a dynamic environment, things are changing all the time. You know, myself or other experienced folks, leaders can't be around you at all times. You need to make judgment calls, and having that comfort with doing that and the ability to do that is really really key. Again, especially in smaller operations where people tend to be spread thin, and you have a lot more they have a much more independent role. And then finally, as far as attitudes go, I think, having fun is just crucial to sustainability in this profession. I mean, I think that applies more. I think that applies to life generally, but especially this, in fire, we're not in it to get rich. If I want to get rich, I would probably learn to program or something like that, or get into finance. But so in other words, because we're not, making buku bucks here, it's not our motivator. We need to like having fun and continuing enjoying your role is just so important. So if you're not enjoying what you do, it's time to critically evaluate your situation and see if a change is needed. And that's something that I place a really high place a lot of stock in for the folks that come here. I want them to come here to South Carolina and see that this work is fun, that burning is fun, that Southern culture is cool. I just want to give them an immersive, high quality, enjoyable learning environment. And as a quick example, the folks that come here, we eat really, really well, probably better than we should with our nonprofit funds, but kind of give them a culinary tour of the state, and we have all these hot spots to show them to, or to show them. Actually, thinking of in 2022, there was a group of Safe Club, University of Idaho Safe Club members that came out here to burn, and took them. There's a little town in upstate, well, kind of Midland, South Carolina, called Cheraw. We burned a bunch of longleaf pine there, very small town, but they have this Mennonite restaurant there, and these Mennonites just crush delicious foods, just so good. And where they specialize in is desserts, and they have this 3-tiered tray that they bring out to your table when the time comes. All these, it's like 15 different homemade desserts on it, and I captured this on camera. It was just so perfect. Emily, I forget her last name, red hair, plopped this 3-tiered tray down in front of her. Her eyes about rolled out of her head. It was so hilarious. But the opportunities we have, Southerners are, they're very fond of their food. So, that's just one aspect of making things fun here that people really, really enjoy. And I just think that generally that's a really important part of being successful in your career is just finding ways to enjoy things. And if it's not what you hope it be or want it to be, you gotta, just evaluate what's going on and try to fix it or changing.
Awesome. Thanks,
Sorry,
Devin.
that was really long-winded.
That was great. Okay, so similar question, but this time taking those knowledge, skills, and attitudes, things that you've developed while you've been in fire, and what are those knowledge, skills, and attitudes that have served you in your life? Those things that you think, gosh, I'm just so glad I know how to do that because I learned this in fire and fuels.
Yeah, so like knowledge, I guess, like just understanding nature and natural resources a lot better. I just think that's cool. Obviously, I as I mentioned earlier, I like being outside a lot, both personally and professionally. But I just kind of like knowing how the world works, at least, to some extent. Clearly, there's infinite processes I know nothing about, but compared to the modern, the everyday American who knows, probably doesn't even like to be outside. I enjoy understanding nature and especially fire's role in it. Knowledge that I have a career doing cool stuff, collaborating with high quality people that makes it very rewarding. I'm almost 40 years old now, so I have a lot of friends in like tech and finance that make a whole lot more money than I do, but they face a lot of existential angst that I don't. They dislike their jobs, and their coworkers are one-upping them and everyone's ladder climbing, all this stuff. It just sounds like a really horrible work environment that, yeah, you make big paychecks, but 40 plus hours a week is just like a real grind. So the knowledge that, again, I get to do fun stuff with awesome people, I find just really deeply satisfying. And knowing about wildland fire, I think it's increasingly interesting to people. I get, when people learn about it, that, like, think of like the cocktail party situation. People just like come up and talk to me about it quite a bit because it's becoming more of a pressing societal issue. So people are just generally interested in it a lot more than they were 5 and 10 years ago. So I really enjoy chatting with the lay folks in my life about wildland fire. And skills, I've just developed. I mean, I'm no professional, but really good mechanical skills that that come in handy in my day-to-day life. Chainsaw skills. I've just been clearing trees in my backyard recently, and oh my gosh, if you got to pay for tree work out of your pocket, it's absurdly expensive. It almost makes you want to start a tree company. But anyway, being able to do that is cool. Fire building skills. Oh my gosh, I have a large extended family, and my wife's from a large family, so do a lot of family events. We love fires, so people are always just impressed at how quickly I can build a fire without using gasoline, or gasoline's dangerous, obviously, but using other accelerants, without using those, they get a kick out of that. Navigational and map reading and map making skills come in handy. Leadership skills do come in handy too. Being willing to. So like when I was younger, I was really leadership shy. Like I was one of those people that always like stayed in the back and let other people sort stuff out. But now I'm a lot more comfortable stepping up when I see that there's a void or something is going in a way that I think, in my opinion, should not. So stepping forward in just random life situations and being more willing to help out the collective group has really developed quite a lot since I've been a fire leader. And then also like public speaking skills. I'm no master, but in just the day-to-day of like giving briefings all the time and putting on trainings and all this stuff, I found that to be handy with just a comfort and an ease with kind of speaking in front of people, or even like it's kind of relates to what I was saying, just like speaking up around other people, not necessarily like a presentation, but like letting your voice be heard. That's come a long way. The attitudes part, I developed a lot more confidence. I was never like an unconfident person, but it's come a long way. I mean, think about it, fundamentally you're leading other human beings doing badass or dangerous shit in the woods. So, what in your normal life can't you conquer? You know what I mean? Well, I guess like when I had my first child, that was a really crazy moment. Nothing, if anyone has or will be having children in their life, it's an unbelievable moment that nothing can prepare you for. Holy moly. But so fire did not help me with that. But generally, fire has helped me a lot with confidence, because the things you do in your day job makes everything else kind of dialed down in the background. And then as I mentioned, or kind of alluded to earlier, I have a comfort and ease in the woods that other people admire. And then also, this kind of relates to another thing I said previously, but it's kind of a belief in yourself, as a person doing good work in the world, contributing to humanity and Mother Nature, trying to help reintroduce fire, I think is such a noble mission. And to me, it helps me sleep at night. I don't want to say it's not like melatonin helps me sleep, but it's more of the converse of that. I don't lay awake at night, thinking at least about that aspect of my job. Obviously, there's things in other people's, in everyone's job, mine included, that keep you up at night, but it's usually, thankfully, tends to be because there's like a problem I want to figure out or solve, that I can really like scratch my head on that, but it's not feeling that existential angst that I had mentioned earlier. So
awesome. Thanks, Devin.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like how these knowledge, skills, and attitudes, they sneak up, and you think, why do I know how to do that? Other people don't seem to know. Oh, it's because of that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, just fire is such a generalist job. Oh my gosh, you do so much different stuff that it really it just touches down randomly in your life. That's one thing I really like. It's not some highly specialized or highly technical, like on a computer job, that is like totally not applicable to your day-to-day life. I mean, so much fire with the diversity of things you do, just really touches down in so many unexpected ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Obviously I'm in fire. My husband's not in fire, but I'll tell you what, he is a better fire builder than I am. And it always bugs him when people come to me and they're like, will you build a fire, Heather? Because you're a fire person. I'm like, actually, he's better. And he's like, I'm better at it than you are. I'm just used to having a drip torch and having like all the things. And he's much better at like, building it all up and then lighting it so it doesn't get smoky at all. So it's gonna be
Well,
sometimes
it
people
just
assume.
yeah. I don't know if the word emasculating applies to women. I'm not sure. That might be a masculine thing. We know it's the same concept. Like, oh, sorry, I suck at building fires, and just like feel. Ooh.
Right, right.
Um, well, here's a pro tip. Like for me, my secret sauce is newspaper. Like I save newspapers. Newspapers like a great like just I think I don't know if it's class as kindling, but something to start a fire with. And then also to like get a fire initially going. I love having a stash. I mean, if you have like super dry wood at your house, been cured for years and it's great, good to go, then you don't need to do this, and it's way cheaper. But I always like go to Home Depot or whatever. I'll have like a couple bundles of their kiln dried wood because I don't have a really great stash of firewood in my house. Just using that stuff, and you can like use a hatchet and take off smaller pieces of it if you need. But that, and then saving the sticks that fall down in my yard, like dead limbs out of a tree, like the little stuff. I just have a little stash of those, and newspaper, little sticks, and that kiln dried wood. Like boom, it'll get it going so fast, and then from there it's easier to pile on the wood that might not be quite as dry. But I mean, it's like you can't fail. Now, obviously, if things are wet, that's a different story. But that's like the backyard fire solution to me that like you can have an excellent fire going in mere minutes.
Nice. Gotta teach your kids that now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So last question here is recommendations, and you've touched on this a little bit, but recommendations that you've got for folks on getting a job and being successful in the job with your agency or in their career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I already, it was kind of ad nauseum probably, but I'll just mention it again for the sake of the question. With getting a job, I think really the squeaky wheel gets the grease. That kind of like constant banging on people's door. Talking to them on the phone. You don't even have to hound them. I think even just making a personal connection, like talking to the hiring manager, and sometimes you got to like call the office to find the hiring manager. It's like a little bit of a chain of telephone there, but talking to the hiring manager, and what that does is it puts a person to a name, to just like a name or text on a computer screen. Someone just, you really stand out a lot more because they connect that name on the screen with your voice and the things you've talked about. So you stand out way more with that, and especially if you contact them numerous times. I would always kind of like come up with questions to ask people. I'd call them like, oh yeah, I'm curious about that. How many acres do you burn a year? What kind of forest do you burn? And you can just think about anything depending on what you're looking for. But visiting people in person, if you can, goes even more. I mean, that's a real way to be successful. Obviously, so many jobs are really far away, and the West is huge and all that kind of thing. You can't do that. When I was looking for hotshot crew jobs the first time, after I finished my job on an engine in Nevada, I went for this huge road trip, and I was kind of road tripping anyway, but I specifically sought out hotshot crew bases and visited people. I visited probably like 10 or 11 in person, had a killer time, met a ton of people. And oh my gosh, I had so many job offers after that. And it ended up being, I just kind of took the first one that came my way, but I ended up like people kept offering me further on down the road. I'm like, oh dang, should have held out. But yeah, that came in handy, that kind of face-to-face contact. But now, there's so much friggin' opportunity out there now that I think that matters less than it used to. I think it's still helpful, but because like people are getting permanent jobs now, which when they're brand new or have a year of experience, which is vastly different from when I started. People had to kind of put in their time for years as a seasonal and then cross their fingers that someone retired or whatever. But it's not the case now. There's a lot of opportunity, but But I think for being successful in your career, and pardon me if I probably touched on a lot of this too, but well, one point to emphasize that I think that a real big difference maker in your success is less of that kind of like knowledge and skills aspect, again, which can be learned and taught a lot easier than kind of the attitudes that sort of like that, and that intrinsic motivation, like that stuff that's kind of inside you that is harder to cultivate and work on, but with diligent effort and honesty with yourself, you can do that and get better at that stuff. So you're able to work on some of those attitudes and being positive all the time, not being a naysayer is so huge. Just one example. It just takes a shift in mindset, but yeah, that if you can really dial in that stuff, I mean, the sky's the limit. Because if you can have all the knowledge and skills in the world, but if you can't get along with people and you got a crummy attitude and you're hard to work with, you're not going to go anywhere. That's for darn sure. And that respect for yourself and for others, is ultimately kind of determines how successful you'll be, and kind of being a top-notch teammate and leader, that will take you far.
Devin, can you tell us a little bit about the seasonal jobs similar to what you did when you were doing seasonal work in the off season? How does that work with Nature Conservancy? What kind of recommendations might you have for people to get involved in that either? And maybe list a little bit about your training exchanges, things that you're working with as well. Just different ways that people can get involved either seasonally or even in just short-term opportunities to work with you or people that you work with in the Southeast or other places.
Yeah. I mean, I would go. So the website for the Nature Conservancy is nature.org, and somewhere, I think it's towards the bottom of the front page, is like a link for careers. And I think you can even go to nature.org/careers, but there's a way you can find current job opportunities. And really, TNC is ramping up significantly in their hiring, because the feds, and in particular the U.S. Forest Service, has identified TNC as a key partner in helping to solve the wildfire crisis. And our organization is smaller and a lot more nimble than the federal agencies are, with like hiring people and stuff like that. So like what that looks like is we get money from federal agencies and we turn that into boots on the ground or fire planning assistance, all this different stuff. So I'm just seeing it in real time. It seems like every week I'm hearing about another program that's hiring a whole lot more people. Just as a quick example of that, my colleague Katie Sauerbray in Oregon, she's the fire manager in Oregon, they're hiring, I think it's like they're hiring 3 10-person prescribed fire modules, and each one of those has like 2 upper level permanent jobs. I think all 30 of those positions I think are permanent year round. I'm not sure if they're all TNC, but it's like going from 0 fire crew people to 30 like at one time. My colleague Chris Miner in Kentucky, they're standing up. He's like hiring like 30 people right now in Kentucky and Tennessee for burning, whereas he normally hired like 8 or something like this. So there is a whole lot of opportunity. And like I said, we're having like a lot less people hired than they used to. So it's kind of this imbalance that's skewed towards people trying to get into fire. So all I have to say is go to nature.org, and especially if you're looking for like winter prescribed firework, and there's a lot of states that do it now: Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. They all start hiring for like if you start looking at jobs on nature.org in mid-August through probably the end of October, you're going to see stuff popping up left and right about prescribed fire jobs. And then those are seasonal positions most of them start in the new year, like January or February, and run for, a handful or 4 months, 5 months, something like that. So you can kind of tailor it based on what your personal window of opportunity is. There's other ways to get involved here, but it's more like people that have worked here before will all I'll bring them back for short stints. And, like the Safe Club with Heather has been here before a couple of times. We have a relationship with Lone Peak Hot Shots. They send a module here to help us burn in the spring every year. So we have these other kind of things going on. And we're actually kind of on the point of encouraging having fun. We've had so many people that have worked here over the years that really recall their time here fondly, the things they've learned, the people they've worked with, the places they've been, things they've done. And they recall it so fondly, they'll just come out here on their own dime to volunteer and come hang out. So we get that occasionally too. But yeah, I'd say in the kind of late summer time frame, monitoringnature.org on the careers page for stuff that pops up, and there's more permanent full-time positions popping up all the time, and that's even independent of any burn season too. I think we just generally cruise that site if you're interested in TNC. Cruise that site periodically once or twice a month. Stuff's invariably popping up. You can just there's a little search tab, you can type in fire and pull up all the fire positions. And so we have a small program here. So it's just me, and then I mentioned we just hired another full-time person. She's starting in December. But we just have 2 4-person modules, one that works in the upstate in the mountains, one that works in the low country down on the coast. But I anticipate we'll be increasing those numbers in the not too distant future. So
and tell us about the training exchange that you're about to do next week.
So TREX, it's TREX, all caps, stands for Training Exchange or Prescribed Fire Training Exchange. The Nature Conservancy's Jeremy Bailey, who Heather has worked with quite a bit over the years, he conceptualized the idea. Heather, you probably can confirm this or deny it, but I think it was, it's certainly his. I look at it as his baby. I'm not sure if it's totally his idea, but I view him as the godfather of TREX, and basically what it is, and it's evolved a little bit over the years. I guess I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but fundamentally what it is it's another means of teaching prescribed fire skills to people that don't often have the exposure to it, and they can work on their qualifications like firing boss or burn boss, FFT1, FEMO, whatever. But what it's looked like historically in like a 2-week window, there'll be a couple to several dozen people that'll come in from around the country and around the world as a large workforce to get a bunch of burning done for in the kind of the local region. So it brings people that in their day job, they may not, say they work for the state in Oregon, who to my knowledge still does no prescribed fire whatsoever, but they want to learn how to burn better and develop those skills. They could come out here as a participant and learn. So it kind of exposes people to prescribed fire operations, teaches them those skills. There's a lot of presentations and just general learning that goes on about like local fuels and ecology and fire weather and local fire challenges, all that stuff. But also provides the local area and region with like a bunch of crack shot folks, like a whole like incident management team and a few dozen fire practitioners who go out and hit it hard. Obviously they're beating on the door to get fire done. So I find this with their local partners who can kind of require a lot of heavy poking and coaxing. It's like, oh, it's hunting season, it's not really burning season, we don't want to burn. But with TREX, there's a bunch of people here and there's a lot of setup that goes into it, so people are really receptive to getting stuff done. So you can get a lot of burning done with for like local acres, if you want to think of it that way. And then also it's just like a general good kind of like fire outreach event and community education. There's a lot of that goes on in the background, like little small public events sometimes, but there's just a lot of awareness about prescribed fire and what's going on that goes into it. So yeah, fundamentally it's another means of increasing prescribed fire skills and working on qualifications for people. And I think we'll have 50 participants here. We're doing it kind of up by where I live, up in Greenville, up in the mountains. And yeah, we're doing it. It starts Monday, so I've been scrambling around to get equipment ready and haul it upstate.
Yeah. Um, well, thank you, Devin. That was super fun to hear about those things. I promise that I don't just have people that I know on so that I can learn more about them, but it is really fun for me. Any questions for Devin? You have a question, Riston?
Uh, yeah, not really for Devin, but I was wondering about the Trex program. I was wondering if that could be something I could talk with you about, maybe down the future there. Because
Yeah.
I got my firing boss. I mean, it's pretty much signed off, but I still want some more marks in my task book, and then
Mhm.
next on my list, I'm going for hopefully prescribed burn boss type 2 or maybe something like that, and then I got other stuff
Love it.
coming up too. But yeah, I'm
Need
hoping,
more burn bosses out there. Love it.
Yeah,
yeah,
how do
yeah,
we so I was involved in the ground floors of the Trek stuff, but then I have not been as involved recently. There are local training exchanges through the Washington Prescribed Fire Council has one. In fact, I think it just ended last month.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a
but
lot in
then
the Northwest now.
yeah, how do people get involved in the training exchange that you're running next week, Devin?
Oh, the one at this point, the
I
ship
mean,
has sailed
well,
just
yeah, not
because.
now, but like,
Oh, gotcha. Well, so this one specifically, we're doing it every 2 years. COVID kind of messed stuff up for a while, but we're having the next one in 2025. And then one way to stay on top of all this stuff, Heather, you probably know the website off the top of your head, or maybe you don't, but there's a website, like a Trex website, but I found that it doesn't get updated as
I
often.
know. Yeah.
But what I would really encourage your folks to do is I'm going to type it into the chat. Heather, you're obviously familiar with the FLN networker.
Hmm.
So it's a newsletter. It comes out every 3 weeks, and it's a national thing. It's coordinated by TNC, and if like there's like fire research and other stuff that's just come out. It people advertise jobs there. Conferences and Trexes get advertised there. To me, the FLN networker is the best way to get plugged in. LTNC.org. Hold on, so
Is this a list serve that you can add your name on to?
yeah, you gotta just email. So this is L for Liz Rank. So if you email Liz Rank, ask her to be added to FLN networker listserv. I think that is such a kick-ass resource. I always love looking at what comes out, and it's a great way to stay plugged into fire. And like kind of what some of the broader things happening are. It doesn't have I mean, obviously there's some federal stuff on there, but it's not like a clearinghouse for everything going on in fire, especially with that some of that federal stuff. I don't even so much goes on with that. I don't even know about, obviously. But when it comes to Trexes, that's the best way to stay plugged into Trexes. And yeah, Riston, there's Trexes all over. They actually have some really kick-ass, if you're interested in seeing how tribes burn. There's like some really kick-ass tribal focused Trexes in Northern California that have been going on for a really long time. There's some of the OG ones, and they're great. I have yet been to one myself, but people rave about them. And yeah, man, I think it's mostly just pick your poison as far as what kind of place you want to go to and fuels you want to burn in. And if you want an Eastern vibe or a Western vibe, there's a ton of the Midwest too. There's some really cool ones. So yeah, there's really a lot of opportunity with that.
My fiance Selena, Heather knows Selena. She's back here walking around. She did Trex. She's in fire as well. She's pretty much up there with me. And she went over to Oregon and she explained what she was getting to do over there, and it really sounded interesting and how she got to work on different parts of task books for that she had going, and so it really sounded interesting to me, and I was just kind of hearing that again for the first time in a while there, so I had to ask about it.
Yeah, and just for your general interest in moving up in fire and being and I love it. We need more burn buses out there, so that's wonderful. But yeah, given what you're looking for, I definitely get plugged into the networker. Yeah, it comes out every 3 weeks, not some like spam thing, and it's really jam packed of a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Devin?
Yeah, so how instrumental would you say getting your master's degree in fire ecology was to you moving up in the fire world?
Question.
As much as I want to plug the master's degree, it's really not necessary. It just, and Heather could answer this better than I could. There's in fire, there aren't that many positions that you really need a master's degree for, especially if you want to say in operations. The value that I found in my degree was just a lot of the educational component of it and the research of it. I became a much better writer. I was a teaching assistant for a while. I became a much better instructor. I think a lot of general things, and like sort of my like ability with like some of like the computer programs, the fuel stuff. I have a better awareness of that. But it's not like it's not like if you want to be a lawyer, you got to go to the 3 years of school and get your JD so you can be a lawyer. If certain positions you got to have an MBA for or whatever. Fire is not like that, or certainly not to the same extent. So I think the biggest factor with me getting my current job is just that networking piece and doing a good job at places I've worked with before and having those relationships built. I think having a network and a good diverse network built from doing a good job over a long time. I think that's where the real gold is, honestly, when it comes to fire.
Yep. I just echo that. Something that's no one's going to require even a bachelor's degree. Bachelor's degrees are something that not necessarily a requirement, especially if we're going to stay operational. But sometimes you do things in your life that aren't required of you to do because you know that they're going to be good for you. That can be difficult to motivate sometimes, but that is a lot of times the case.
I mean, I will say that, there's definitely, if you're trying to get into like management and stuff, there's like professional track jobs in fire you do need a degree for. If you like certain levels, you need like a bachelor's degree for.
And it's much easier to get that bachelor's degree when you're younger than it is when you're older. Just as it goes, those bachelor's degrees tend to be made for people that are learning how to be adults usually. And so once you're an adult, you're going back and get your bachelor's degree. It can be pretty annoying. So we're trying to make that less annoying with the way that we're structuring our classes, but still it's just sometimes if you had the choice and you're going in the younger age, getting your bachelor's degree, and then you go back after you got some experience and you do a master's degree, like, Devin had a pretty good structure there with seeing the world a little bit, seeing the need for something, having a question, going and seeking out answers and leveling up that way. It's a pretty good combo.
Yeah. I was just highly interested and motivated, and yeah, that really was a good driver of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna let you go. You've got a drive ahead of you, and really appreciate the time that you gave to us today, and send us some pictures of your treks next week.
Yeah. We'll cross our fingers. Unfortunately, it's quite dry out here with no rain on the horizon. However, we got like 45 burn units potential burn units lined up. So we've done a lot of work getting stuff ready, but sadly it's real dry. However, we have some stuff that we can do that has, a previous fire history, has a low chance of escape, kind of, based on where the fire breaks are and where the unit's located and all that. So we'll be able to get some burning done, but it's probably not going to be pedal to the metal unless rain comes in the forecast.
Yeah. And if you want to get out as a FOBS ever, Emery had a pretty good time with me at the Bedrock Fire. And Emery because I was chatting with Emery while you were hiring Chelsea. So.
Oh my gosh. So small world. Jeez.
Small world. Yeah. When you said that you just hired someone, I said, oh, she must have taken the job, and I messaged him. And
yes, I was thrilled. Well, thank you for not shit talking me and my program. Otherwise,
I didn't.
Sure.
I talked to you.
Oh, good. Otherwise, Emery would have been like, "Yeah, God, avoid."
Yep, that's another thing. It's a small world, so don't piss people off.
Yeah. Cool. It's that's awesome.
Yeah. All right, we'll let you go. Thanks
All
again,
right.
Devin.
Thanks,
Thanks
Devin.
for the opportunity. Yeah, yeah. Hey, thanks for sitting all this time. I know I'm long-winded, but yeah, fire's a great career, and I'm glad to be able to give back a little bit and reconnect with the University of Idaho because I love it and I love my time there.
Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next week,
See ya.
hopefully.